welcome you on this call. I'm glad that you're listening either on the recording or if you're here on the Zoom call. Welcome. I am the Director of Civic Engagement for the Foundation for Climate Restoration, and this is our monthly call. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker. Please join us in welcoming to our monthly community event, Balaji Ramaroa. Balaji will tell us about hydrogen energy and its place in the transition economy as it rolls over the next few years. Go ahead, Balaji.
Okay. Are you able to view my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. I wanted to probably start off on some of the basics of the hydrogen for everybody else. And my point is that, I wanted to probably share whatever knowledge I have and learn from whatever questions, what you ask us, and we can learn together. And the other thing is, I am from the GSOP, or as well that I do a lot of wicked problem approach. So hydrogen is one of the methods. So I just wanted to share the knowledge of what I learned on the hydrogen, and I'll move forward on that. So on the why hydrogen fuel, if you see that, it is a clean sort of fuel. It has only 2 molecules of hydrogen. When it burns, it gives you only water. And it has very that's why there's no emissions at all, and that's why it has a lot of use as a fuel, a carrier, right? Like, for example, for the hydrogen fuel cell for dispensers. So those are the ones we have, and it is becoming competitive. They are trying to look at it. I will probably cover the cost at the end of the this talk. What I wanted to say about is the properties. It has no color. That's why I have the comparison between hydrogen, natural gas, and gasoline, just for you to know how it differs. And you can see the densities differences related to the air. And most important thing is the energy. So if you look at the energy by weight is high, but energy by volume will be lower because it has only 2 molecules, and that's what we need to probably understand on this. Sorry, this is one of the slides I wanted to probably show you what differs. When there's a hydrogen flame, you cannot even be able to detect in a daylight, and in night light. That's why I got this information, and so you cannot detect the flame. But you'll have to probably use some sensors to look at that flame. And I wanted to probably just give an overview of how the fuel cell works for all these hydrogen cars and hydrogen trucks and others. So basically, you have the cell over here, and you send hydrogen, and it combustes with oxygen, and you have this water. Then this is a sort of the electrolyzers type, where you have the proton exchange membrane, and you generate power, on the between those ends, which are the anodes and the cathodes. And so then it converts, and then you'll have the electrical current. Just wanted to give some basics on the fuel cell. So how do we get hydrogen? So hydrogen we get in different forms. One is you have, like, for example, you have wind energy. So you take the wind energy, and you take it through the hydrolysis. And then for some reason it is jumping like that. Okay, so you have the electrolyzer, and so for the electrolyzer you need also water. So you apply the power and you do the electrolysis, and you produce hydrogen and you get oxygen also. So that's the one. The other one is the solar. You see that, and you have the other forms of energy, which is the hydro, biomass, and everything on that. The traditional sources of hydrogen was from the refineries, because refineries need a lot of hydrogen for doing for the processing, especially if they have some sort of sulfur compounds. They hydrogenate it and they convert that to hydrogen sulfide, and then clean those fuels on that. So, and then you have the other ones, which is the coal, and also you have the nuclear. So I wanted to probably highlight, I think the first nuclear-based hydrogen electrolyzer of 1.25 megawatt was recently, I think, commissioned in February, I think. So that is also a path to get the power. So the most important thing is, in order to get the power, right? So you need to have some forms of energy, but the problem is with the renewables, you may not have a constant flow of the power. So you might have to do some sort of an intermittent processes, so it may not be continuous. Whereas if you look at the nuclear part, it would be a continuous one, and that actually provides more sort of a rigid power supply. You can see. And so this one, all this information, I got it from the Hydrogen Safety Portal. It's a really good site where it provides you a lot more information. So we talked about all the sources in the previous slide, and then the applications part of it is what I wanted to say. That I talked about the fuel cells. Then it can be also used for engines and turbines. One thing is there is a lot of work being done to use intermittently, mixing hydrogen with the natural gas, and what they call it as a blending. So I think the blending is getting accomplished, 5 to 10%. In fact, I think in Canada, as well as I think in UK, they have also did a sort of a town distribution where they blended hydrogen and it was used for the domestic fuel, but with only about a certain percentage, because about that, you will have issues on the flame and other ones, right? So just wanted to give that. And then also for the engines and turbines, there is a lot of work being done to blend hydrogen. So that way, when you try to convert hydrogen and use it, the blending will become the sort of a source intermittently, but the methane reduction could be lower, because once you try to blend it, so for example, if you do a 10% blending, your carbon emissions could be a reduction of overall 3%. But you can use the existing infrastructure. So that's why, the blending part is becoming more useful. Then you have the refining. Then you have the methanol production, for the chemicals. It also used in ammonia production, and metal production, food processing, and the cosmetics. Yeah. So this is I just wanted to give some sort of a pictorial view of where all it can be used. You can see that. Okay. So power generation and grid balancing, that's the most important thing. And then you have the transportation, which I talked about. Then the fuel for the residential and commercial building, which is what I told about, some pilot projects where they're doing some blending, and feedstock. One thing I wanted to say is, if you want to actually burn pure hydrogen, then you need equipments which are compatible, because when you try to burn hydrogen, there is going to be a higher flame speed. So you'll have to have equipments which will be able to contain that energy release, and it will be a custom design for 100% hydrogen. Yeah. And also wanted to just give some sort of a supply chain information. So when you do a hydrogen at the manufacturing facility, what you do is you compress it, and you'll have to transport it. So the transportation can be a cylinder, normal cylinders, or a tube trailer, or it could be a pipeline. Through the pipeline, you can send it out and then to different distributions. The other method is all these, the tube trailers and the pipeline, that becomes a sort of a restriction because of the light molecular weight of hydrogen, right? It needs a tremendous amount, because you can only hold a certain weight of each of that. So it will not be a cost-effective, solution. So the other cost-effective solutions could be you have to liquefy hydrogen, and the liquefaction of hydrogen is not easy because it's about minus 423 degree F. So you got to liquefy that and then use that, transport it, so you can have the bulk containers, and then you can take that and vaporize it and use wherever it is possible. The other method of what everybody is looking for is, say, for example, you want to get this hydrogen, from, say, for example, from US to Europe. So you can probably take the liquid hydrogen and transport it, but the infrastructure becomes so difficult, just like the LNG. Like LNG is at least minus 260, right? Whereas hydrogen is minus 423. So there's going to be a lot of energy losses, So the other method is you can convert this to ammonia, and so a lot of ammonia plants are already there, right, for the fertilizer industry. But if you say have a source like a green hydrogen, and if you convert that to ammonia, then so you can easily transport it. It's in a tanker or a ship or whatever it is, and then you can take to the user facility, and you can crack this ammonia, and energy required becomes much lower, and then you can use that, for different, industrial sources. Like, for example, if it is for the transportation sector, you need to go to the dispenser and you can get that, or if it's an industrial use, you can also do that. So ammonia cracking, this method is probably becoming more cost effective, and a lot of the companies are looking at this option actually. And the hydrogen safety. So because I just wanted to highlight about the hydrogen safety, there's a lot of information available, and on the Hydrogen Tools website you can look at it, and you'll have to look at the static part of it, electric charge, the mechanical impact, and you have the hydrogen embrittlement, the metal fractures, and also looking at different issues what we have on the hydrogen. I'll not go into detail, but I just wanted to give a flavor, and so you'll have a lot of safety issues on this. You got to, but the good thing is there's a lot of safety standards being developed. No, the NFPA has already come up with an NFPA 2 for the hydrogen, and there's other safety standards that are also getting developed. And it is not a new one, because it was being used for the last 80 years, in the refinery industries. So it's only the extension and then making everybody aware of it. Yeah. So this is a slide I got this from the Department of Energy, website. So you can see what the hydrogen uses are currently, and where they are going to have this increased. And then you can see that information about all those deployments of, you can even use it as a backup power, forklift, electrolyzer, fuel cell, for the buses, for the fuel cell, and for the retails, and also the cost. Uh, this is the one I wanted to probably talk about the cost. Um, if you look at the current cost, if you try to use an electrolyzer, the components for the electrolyzer is you need to have power, so that becomes a high cost if you are taking green power. And then the other thing is water. You need to process water, you need to treat the water and use it. So at the moment, the cost in 2020 is about $5 per kg. But if you do on the refinery side, if you have the steam methane reforming, those costs are between $1 to $2 per kg, but that is without the CO2 abatement, right? Because once you capture the CO2, then they call it as the blue hydrogen, and the cost will increase there also, but it will be about half the cost, about $2 to $2.5 per kg. And what the Department of Energy has a sort of a target, what they call it as 111, $1 per kg within 10 years. I think that's their target. But they are going to work on that. There's a lot of plans on that. But the intermediate step is about $2 per kg. As we see that, that's the reason a lot of refinery areas, they are going to have the hydrogen hubs, and that's how they are trying to capture CO2 and do a blue hydrogen, and also convert that to blue ammonia, and it can be used. So I just wanted to give that one. And there are some the levelized cost of hydrogen, they call it LCOH, dollar per kg, and there is a baseline and what is optimized. This is based on the reforming, but for the electrolyzers, the challenges are about the noble metals for the electrolyzers. For the so that one becomes cost becomes higher, and they are targeting to reduce it, and there's a program to do that as well. And so there are different types of electrolysis techniques. The predominant one is what you call it as proton exchange membrane, which is PEM. So I think that's what I have, but I have a lot of backup slides, but I wanted to take some questions so that I can answer. Yeah.
Excellent. Does anyone have questions? Because I do. Let me check. I see Alan has his hand up. Would you like to go ahead and go, Alan?
Yes, you mentioned something about the high cost of renewable energy. I believe if I understood you. So one of the issues in California and probably other places is the issue of curtailment. Solar is the predominant renewable energy in California, but it's actually more solar than one can use now. So
okay.
The question comes up about that curtailed energy essentially is free. However, the capital cost of the electrolysis then becomes you can only use that then part of the day if you're using free energy. So there's all these trade-offs that I can't do in my head, but I wondered if anybody has studied that in particular.
Yeah, I think there were some, whenever you try to get this electrolyzers, built, and you're absolutely right. Say for example, if they have to take some sort of power sharing, right, on the grid, right, they could produce a wind or solar and take the credits, right. So you can do that, but the problem is the stability of the grid, and you also don't want to disrupt the other commercial uses for the power, and that's one of the areas you have to look carefully how you're going to operate it. And as you rightly said, even if there's a capacity available, you may not be able to continuously operate the electrolyzers on a day. And one of the things what they look at is adding additional even using hydrogen at the fuel cells, you can balance the power in the grid. That's one aspect. And that's why, the nuclear option becomes much better for the reliability, on the power.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, Alan. Melanie, would you like to ask a question?
Yes. Thank you, Balaji. This is something that I don't know anything about, and it's quite interesting. So this particular snapshot that's on the screen shared right now, where will you share with us, Terry, the resources? I know that Balaji is probably sharing all of that with you. And so this is something that is already being done. And I hear what you're saying about for the hydrogen transport, they have to liquefy it, but I'm just really clear that these are technologies that already exist. I mean, I've worked with liquid oxygen for many years. And I'm really curious about a scale up of this, or where we're at right now from the U.S. perspective, Department of Energy. Like, where are we headed with this, and what's already in place that's forwarding all of this? And the other thing would be what's needed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. And in fact, when I attended one of those, presentations from the Department of Energy, they do have some targets, and and then they are trying to put some hydrogen, hubs, using different modes, in different areas. I think they're trying to develop nationwide like 4 or 5 hydrogen hubs where there's going to be a mega scale of hydrogen production. And so there are plans already available. And if you go to this hydrogen and fuel cell website, you can see more information about their hydrogen roadmap. In fact, there is a hydrogen roadmap for the US also. Yeah.
You. And also, are cars going to be easily convertible to, like, the existing vehicles to this type of powering?
I think it'll be special because it'll be a fuel cell, right? Instead of having, I think if it's a powered car, I think electric powered car, EV to conversion of a fuel cell, I'm not sure. I think if you go to the I think DOT website, they have some information. But what I know is in order to have this hydrogen powered vehicle, there is going to be a small tank, and it will be a high pressure tank. And then you have this fuel cell. So this hydrogen, is taken to the fuel cell, and that's where the conversion is there to power and use that power to drive the vehicles. Yeah.
It's interesting because after Balaji talked to me about this, I started seeing hydrogen happening everywhere, just like he said it would. And up here in Washington State, there was actually a flight that was a hydrogen flight, and they described the large tank behind the pilot.
Yeah.
And that fits in with what you just said.
That's correct. And you can see one of these slides I have is, say for example, you have a 150 horsepower, car. It consumes about 3/4 of a kg of hydrogen for 100 miles. And if you look if you look at the gasoline, you can see, right, how much you need. And so this is just for a comparison, I have this here. And moreover, you need also the infrastructure for the hydrogen, right, for dispensing. And so I think in California, I think they already have a lot of hydrogen dispensing areas, which means in order to have that hydrogen dispenser, right, you need to have facilities. Either you have, compressed hydrogen, which you bring it, or you do a local, production, using electrolyzer. So there are some methods, or you take the liquid hydrogen and then, you vaporize it and then use those hydrogen. But you also need a good compression, because these pressures are high pressures, and it's a light gas. So those are the infrastructure needed. Yeah.
Excellent. I see that Mike Robinson had his hand up. Would you like to ask your question, Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Terry. I tuned in a few minutes late, so I may have missed it, but did you talk about the hydrogen rainbow? And if not, do you want to talk about that? Do you have a backup slide on that?
I probably didn't catch the question. You said hydrogen.
Oh, the hydrogen rainbow. I think he's talking about blue hydrogen, green hydrogen.
Oh, okay.
Brown, gray, black.
Okay. Okay.
Pink.
So, okay.
Turquoise.
So I did just talk about it. No, I did not have a slide, but I can talk about it. So the first one is the gray hydrogen, which means it's the conventional hydrogen, what you have, which is, the reforming and others without the carbon capture. And if you do a carbon capture, then it becomes a blue hydrogen. And if the hydrogen resources are from renewables, and you use an electrolyzer, then it is green hydrogen. I think these are the three main things, and there are other colors as well. So I just wanted to, provide that overview. Yeah.
And follow-up question. I understand that either PG&E or SoCalGas is putting in hydrogen fueling stations up and down I-5 in California.
Mm-hmm.
And they're currently using SMR for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're doing carbon capture at those sites. My guess is probably not. Do you know? Are you aware of that program?
I am aware, because I think what I know is they are planning to have this carbon capture, but also the carbon capture, it depends, right? That's why I what I'm aware is in Houston, right, especially in the Bay areas, I think they are going to have blue hydrogen, that means they have infrastructure for the carbon capture, and carbon capture cost also becomes prohibitive if it's a standalone system. Maybe that's the reason why that they may not have a capture, but it has to be integrated with an infrastructure. Yeah.
Right. And that's fundamentally why they're doing these hydrogen stations with methane reforming, is because they have a pipeline that provides gas to that location. Right. They don't have a pipeline that can take away CO2. Yeah. And they don't have enough power to do green hydrogen at those locations.
That's correct. See, like for example, as rightly said, if it's a sort of a dispensing station and you have to use, there are some modular units of the SMRs which you could use it. It may not have a carbon capture, facility on that, but I think there are places where I think you can even do carbon capture cryogenic if you're trying to use CO2 for food grade or something like that. It could be a modular unit, but there's going to be a lot of study to be done to look at the economic aspect here.
But I think if you don't do carbon capture, driving with hydrogen is actually worse than gasoline, isn't it? If you do SMR, if you do gray hydrogen.
Yeah, because you're producing additional CO2 footprint. Correct. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Could you guys define SMR?
Steam methane reforming. Yeah. And also there are some technologies on hydrogen, what they are trying to do, because steam methane reforming, it's sort of a big plant where they have different steps, on that. So with a catalyst, with steam and hydrogen, you produce the shift gas, and the shift gas is getting converted. So then you have hydrogen and CO2, and then the CO2, they has to be separated off. So that is the steam methane reforming. But now there are technologies which are coming up, what they call it as autothermal reforming, ATR. So everything is done in a single unit, and it's a compact unit. And that's the technology being discussed at the moment because compared to SMR and ATR, could be more beneficial because of the smaller footprint, and a lot of work is being done in that area.
I see that Peter has a question.
Yes, thank you. Hydrogen has a much smaller molecule, I think, molecule size than like natural gas.
Yeah.
Now natural gas is known to leak way too much from pipelines and so on.
Yeah.
Is that going to be a big problem on hydrogen? And kind of a follow-up question: if it does leak, is there any other thing that we need to worry about once it gets?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's the area of looking at for the safeties and others. Because if you're, and that's why, say for example, if you have a sort of a conventional natural gas pipeline, and if you want to mix hydrogen and you want to transport it out, so there are a lot of things you need to see. And as you said, that it's a very light molecule, and you'll have to look at one is the embrittlement issue. The other one is all the normal valves where there is a lot of fugitive emissions which are coming up. So you got to look at it and have a compatible valve system. So with the compatible for the hydrogen service, with almost no fugitive emissions, nil fugitive emissions, and so those are all the areas which needs to be looked at. Yeah, for those ones. Yeah, I missed the second part of the question. What is the second part of the question?
Second part is okay. When hydrogen gets out, what happens to it? Does it get to join with anything else? Does it rush out into space as fast as it can, or?
So basically, there is some safety concerns also, because the hydrogen, the flammability is between 4 to 75%. So you have to make sure, there is no sort of a hazard cloud there. But it's light gas, it can probably disperse. But yeah, that's where, we'll have to be careful, in doing it. And that's why the facility, spacing between the dispensers and the also, the tanks and others, will have to be looked at. And there are a lot of guidelines coming up. And then NFPA has, I think, already published, some of those facility siting criteria. Yeah.
We have only about 4 minutes left. David Batuski, would you like to ask your question?
Well, I just wanted to bring up with the hydrogen rainbow, the colors there. I was just reading an article in the Science Journal about it's titled Hidden Hydrogen, about all of the hydrogen that's seeping out of the earth in various places, and saying that there's a huge reservoir of hydrogen, or lots of reservoirs available. And that is gold hydrogen, that is not taking any energy to create the hydrogen, but of course, then you have to manage it once you would drill for it and extract it from the earth. I just wondered if you were very aware of the work that was being done.
Yeah, I did read that article, and that's a very, very interesting article. I saw that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think we have time if you wanted to ask your question, Alan, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Alan. Oh, I see you're muted.
About the issue of the steam reforming to hydrogen, that's about 70% efficient, and I think a fuel cell is probably another 70%, so that'd be about 50% efficiency, which I think is still better than an internal combustion engine, but that's not still not the way that we should be going along. But I think the other thing I want to ask is the issue of the fueling stations. There's 150,000 fuel stations in the United States. personal vehicles are most likely going to be electric. I think it's the large vehicles that are going to be hydrogen, so you may need a lot fewer of them. And so, what is the relative economics of on-site hydrolysis versus larger scale hydrolysis and pumping and taking the hydrogen in tanks and stuff like that?
I think that's more of a sort of a transport infrastructure and supply chain, studies which needs to be done. But just wanted to give you a sort of idea, right? For example, this is one of the trucks or buses being used for the bigger ones, right? And then those needs like a 50 or a 70 kg of hydrogen, and in order to produce that, you need to have good infrastructure to get that. And this could be like a solution which could change regionally, is my view. And it could be either sometimes you have this liquid hydrogen available, and you can have these vaporizers and use that. That's one solution. The other solution is if you have power, the electrolysis option, right? The electrolysis option is a lot of work being done at the moment, and then I think they are targeting to reduce the cost for that, and so that could be an intermittent solution also. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the time that you put in today. We really appreciate it.